But as soon as you would leave, what people didn't see was us adopted girls would be shooed to the corner. The only time that we were allowed to get out, or at least had the blanket taken off and the car seat to be upright, was whenever they would hand us a peanut butter sandwich. And then as soon as we were done eating, we would have to go back in darkness.
Today we have a really special guest. So we're just going to have a chit chat about what led her to Christ, what's kept her in Christ, and we're so excited for you to join us. Like, share, and subscribe. Send this to somebody that you feel needs to hear these words of encouragement, these words of testimony, for we're healed through the testimony of Jesus. So without further ado, all right.
Well, hi. I go by Hannah. I was born and raised in Arkansas. When I was about 9 weeks old, I had nearly every bone in my body broken from abuse from biological family. I got sent to live with a foster family at first, around 3 months, and they ended up adopting me because the state basically begged them to take me because I wasn't expected to survive. They said, let's make sure that she feels the warmth of a mom and a dad. And God said, you know what, let's change that story. Let's let her live. And I lived. That family, the first adopted family, very religious. They're Pentecostal, like hardcore Pentecostal. All the craziness
The
started.
state found these parents because they were already in a foster.
They were already in a foster adoptive situation. There was 3 other girls that they had adopted. And so the state said, you know what, let's place her here. You know, what's one more? They already had 3 biological children of their own, 3 adopted girls, and then there was me. So 7.
Wow.
They were very religious, Pentecostal, very strict Pentecostal, like skirts down to our ankles. Our shirts had to go past our elbows. Collarbones couldn't be showing. No makeup. We couldn't cut our hair, have jewelry on. You know, yes, like Bible was used for every single argument, even if they were wrong type people. So growing up, we attended church all the time. There were pillars in the church. Everyone saw how perfect us kids were, and they wanted that family to give them pointers and tips and tricks on how to get their kids to act like us. On the outside, we looked very much the perfect family, the very example of perfect within the Pentecostal church. But whenever you would look closer, you would start seeing bruises on us adopted kids.
Just the adopted.
Just the adopted kids. We would go to church with bruises on our faces, on our fingers, you know, like we would have marks across our backs. And we, us adopted girls, we were always quiet because we were told children should be seen and not heard, whereas their biological children could say and do whatever they wanted to do. And we just had to sit there with our hands on our laps at church. We were allowed to sing. We were allowed to sing songs. We were allowed to clap. We were allowed to do that, but just very like mechanic is the only way I can describe it. If you would go to our home, you know, it would be nice and tidy and picked up and cleaned and looked perfect and everything. But as soon as you would leave, what people didn't see was us adopted girls would be shooed to the corner. We would have to stand with our nose in the corner with our hands behind our backs for hours. And then for us younger girls, there was another little girl there who is my age. She's a couple months older than me. We were often called twins because where there was one, there was another.
Okay.
And they would put us in car seats. They would strap us in our car seats inside. They would duct tape our mouths, turn the car seats upside down, and put a blanket over us for hours.
How old were you?
We were probably 3 or 4 when all of this was happening. The only time that we were allowed to get out, or at least had the blanket taken off and the car seat to be upright, was whenever they would hand us a peanut butter sandwich. And then as soon as we were done eating and as soon as we got done drinking our milk or whatever they chose to give us, we would have to go back in darkness. You know, like it amazes me how people called us perfect. They looked past the imperfections they saw within the family and said, we want our family to be just like that. I remember going to public school. And I was potty training, and I remember a teacher taking me to the bathroom, and I remember her telling me, don't get up, I need to go get someone. And I thought, this is weird. Like, for someone who's in potty training, I'm like, did I not wipe right? Like, what's going on? You know, like, you don't know. And she comes back in there and she's like, hey, I have another teacher coming. Can you tell me what happened to your back? And I said the only thing that I had heard my then parents say, and I was like, my dad beat me with a belt. She started taking pictures of my back. Another teacher came in and they submitted a case to CPS. Where in that home, we were brought up to not say anything to anyone because if we did, we'd get beat. All the other adopted girls got the same lecture. If you say anything, you get beat. I said that. CPS was called. And then once CPS left, that night I got beat.
Probably more severely.
More severely than anything. And not only did I get beat, the other adopted sisters got beat too. Wow. Because what affects one of you affects all of you. Mm-hmm. That was the mentality that we were raised to believe.
And at these beatings or punishments, were there biological children involved watching? Or
they would watch. They would have them watch, and sometimes they would laugh at us, and we would get verbally abused by them while it was happening. Fast forward, one of my sisters, the middle one, there was 3. The middle sister, I'm not going to name names just to protect them. She got sent away because she started acting out, their version of acting out.
Okay.
She had an eating disorder that was brought on by that family. So she had a hard time eating. And they tried getting her into therapy and tried saying she won't eat, because anytime a kid in Arkansas would have like a disability or something wrong with them, the family would get paid more. Wow. So they were parading her around to all these places saying that she had an eating disability. Mm-hmm. She physically could not eat. And if she would eat, because they used to pile our plates full of food, and whatever was put on our plate, we had to eat every last bite.
Right.
Like if we left anything, we'd get beat. Or we would have to eat even more food. Her thing was she couldn't eat that much, so she would end up puking. And then they would have all of us adopted girls sit around the table and watch her eat her own puke. Mm. She got sent away because their reason was to tell all the religious people that they knew that the reason why she got sent away was because she said Bloody Mary in mirror.
That like weird game.
Like don't
knows.
say it. Yeah.
It's like a dumb game you would
exactly.
play. Actually, it might be just like a real spiritual thing where you really are summoning something, but she didn't do that.
She didn't do it.
Yeah.
They just said that she did, and they sent her away. Fast forward to the daughter that was my same age, the other adopted daughter that was my same age. Their biological children had full reign over us adopted kids. We were seen as less than, and the adopted kids knew that. So the adopted kids would often lie on us and get us in trouble. They would steal stuff and then blame it on us, and we would get the brunt of the punishment.
Right.
Me and that sister and the biological youngest son were all swimming in a pool one day, and we had to do whatever he said. He wanted to play superhero. He said, Hannah, you're, Catwoman, and you're going to be like Ivy. You're going to be like Poison Ivy. Mm-hmm. And he told her, I want you to pretend to drown me, and I'm going to try to get out. Oh. But it was like a playful, like we were young. We were like 5 or 6, I'm guessing at the time. You know how it goes with your childhood. She pretends to. She had just dunked his head underwater because that's all she was going to do was just dunk his head underwater. And she did that, and the mom came around the corner and literally yanked her out of the pool by the hair on her head. That sister got sent away.
Because she's now a danger.
Because she's now a danger to the biological children. So now there's only 2 of us in that home. And so we end up leaving the church we were going to. We ended up going to a church that was maybe 40 minutes away. It was with some of the adopted mom's family. It was her cousin. And so we started attending there because church people started asking questions about bruises, and they started noticing stuff. Like they knew what was going on, but they couldn't say anything because we couldn't talk to anyone. So they all felt bad, but that family knew that something was about to happen. So they pulled us out. We moved houses. We moved to a farm, country Arkansas, like in the middle of nowhere, 10 acres. We had ducks, geese, dogs, like everything. The only thing we didn't have at the time was like goats and horses.
Do you know where they got this like money from to move a house? Because that's quite a lot.
They got it from us girls. Every one of us girls, they would get paid from the state, a monthly stipend, and they spent it on whatever they wanted to spend it on. It was never on us. It was always on their children and what they wanted. We were just there. We were just a cash cow, literally. And we moved, and I'm half Black. My biological father is Black, and my biological mom is white. And we're in the middle of Arkansas. And the mentality back then was still, if you are a mixed race, you're an abomination. That's what I grew up believing about myself. Like, oh, you're half Black. Okay, we only see you as Black, and Black is bad. Like they would straighten my hair, put in relaxer, which is chemical chemical straightening. They would do that to make me look less black because they were ashamed. So we moved to the farm, and their thing was, she's half black, so let's treat her like what she is, a slave and a cash cow. So I was put in charge of feeding the animals, cleaning up, doing all the heavy lifting while their children just got to sit back and watch. And this is where the kids' mentality really took a dark turn. Because before,
They're
it
getting
wasn't
older.
bad. Yeah, they started noticing, hey, if we treat her like our parents will love us more. It was that type. It was like a fight for attention from the parents. So they started reading up on slavery and ways to punish slaves. The kids did.
Mm.
And they started not calling me by my name. I was always it. The kids said to me, if we take away your name, we take away your identity. Mind you, we're all still going to church.
Right.
We're all still going to church. Everything's perfect. You would think that it wouldn't be this way, because at church, yeah, they wouldn't talk to me, but they were civil.
Right. And it was kind of like a
It was a
make-believe you're
show.
happy.
Yeah, it was a show.
Mm-hmm.
The oldest adopted sister ended up, because she went through a ton of abuse, like a ton. And she ended up running away one day. She got on the school bus and didn't come back.
How old was she?
She was 18. She waited until she was 18. And I'm the one who figured out she was gone. Nobody else knew she was gone.
Wow.
In that home, they had an obsession with lining up our toothbrushes, all the kids' toothbrushes on the wall. Okay, it was weird. I'm like, okay, cool, organization, cool, whatever. So I was actually the one that found out that the oldest sister's toothbrush was missing. I noticed little details. And I told the mom, I was like, hey, her toothbrush is gone. The mom freaks out, runs into her room, starts going through all of her drawers and everything. Everything is gone. She calls the husband up. The husband worked in the public school district.
Oh, shoot.
And he gets off work, rushes home, and we never see her again.
So they didn't really care? I mean,
So later on, I found out they did. They were threatening to kill her. They were threatening
like
to
if
send
you
her to
don't come
jail. If
back-
you don't come back or if you say anything to anyone, we will make sure you disappear.
Wow.
We will make sure that happens. And yeah, she was gone. And I remember the night she left. And for a couple of nights after, I would sleep in front of my window. And I would wake up early enough so that way the family didn't know that I was sleeping by the window. And I would pray that I would hear her tapping on my window. Yeah, like, come get me. You forgot me. You left me, because I knew she loved me. Like, she basically raised me in that family. Like, she wasn't just a big sister to me. She was like a mom figure, because she always had my back. Anytime the dad would come after me, she would make sure she took the brunt of it. Because I was a baby, and I didn't know any better because that was the only family I'd known. She had known other family, but I was innocent. I didn't know. I thought this was normal, So the church that we ended up going to at the time, they started asking a lot of questions. The mom told us, kids, just say, she no longer lives with us. If they ask, she said, don't say anything else. Just say that. And, me and your dad will take care of it. And that's all we could tell people. But then people started noticing I would come to church with more bruises.
You couldn't hide anymore.
I couldn't hide it. She couldn't take the brunt of it anymore.
Were they strategic in their abuse about, like, don't hit the face, don't hit the hands?
Sometimes, yeah. Like, sometimes, like, she would take, the mom had more of the rage and anger issues than the dad. The dad would just get mad that the mom got mad, and then he would take his anger out on us.
Right.
So she would take wooden back scratchers to the bottoms of our feet, and she would take plastic hangers and break them over our feet. She would slap us really hard across the face. And we would go to church with bloody lips, and backs would be cut up. Our fingers would have bruises and sores and stuff all over them, because those paddles that have like the balls attached. She would cut the string off, and then she would take the thinnest part, and she would lay our hands down on a table, take the thinnest part, and tap our hands as hard as she could. Not with the flat end, the edge. So we would go to church with bloody fingers and everything. Everyone's in an awkward position at that church because they're like, we can't say anything because the kids aren't saying anything.
Right.
So they would have to sit there and watch, because we were brought up, if CPS comes, you don't say anything. You just say, everything's good, we're fine, and act all holly jolly with the mom and the dad and get it over with. And then we would get beat after CPS would leave.
Did they ever give you any kind of affection, even if it was fake affection, around people?
Occasionally, like, my idea, how they brought me up with affection was, if I got to call you mom and dad in public, that's affection. If we were at home with the dad, it was yes, sir, no, sir. We were never allowed to call him dad unless it was at church.
But his biological kids.
His biological kids, daddy, dad, father, everything else. We as adopted girls, we were not allowed to have a conversation with the dad at all. He was very militant.
Mm.
Like, this is what I expect of you. Don't come near me. Don't touch me. Like, if we touched him, he would go shower and
Wow.
act like we had the plague and it was a huge ordeal and we would get beat. The mom was a little bit softer, I think because she had to be, because she was a stay-at-home mom. She homeschooled us and everything. After that whole public school incident happened, she homeschooled all of us kids. And so I would get to call her mom. On my birthday, she would tell me, "Happy birthday," and give me a hug and act like it was a big deal.
Huh.
And, for a kid growing up, thinking that's normal, I was just like, oh, yay, she loves me.
Right.
The one day a year, she loves me. Like, I did good today.
And was this your actual birthday or was it a
It would be on my actual birthday.
Okay.
Yeah, they would always celebrate my birthday on my actual birthday. And, they would get me like a gift, like whether it be like a Barbie doll, or I remember one year I got High School Musical and I watched it like crazy. I had my own room, and because all the adopted sisters left, so I had my own room. The boys shared a room, and then the oldest daughter, their biological oldest daughter, had her own room. So when people would come over, they're like, "Oh, great, you have your own room. It looks great. It looks awesome." But what they didn't know, as soon as they would leave, a latch would go up on the outside of my door. My window was bolted shut. I was literally a prisoner in my own home. Homeschooling wasn't fun. On top of all the farm work and everything that I had to do, I was homeschooled. So if I got anything less than an A on a test, I would be starved until I made an A.
Wow.
So there would be, the max I think I went was like 2 days before I would pass out. And I would get told that it was my fault because I wasn't smart enough. I found out later, recently actually, that they had me tested for autism. But they got the diagnosis, but they did nothing about it. And in Arkansas, like I said, if a kid has a disability, or as I love to call it, an ability, they get extra money. They don't even have to get you help or anything. It just, they
They
get
don't have
paid.
to prove that they are doing what.
Yeah. They don't have to prove that you're getting treatment or any type of therapy for anything. I even had like a speech impediment growing up that got worse over time because anytime I would mispronounce a word or say a phrase wrong, they'd be like, "Oh, that's your black showing through." And they'd slap me as hard as they could across the face. And they would turn around and tell their kids, "If she says this wrong or if she says something you think is not proper, you have all control to do what you see us do to her."
So they're given permission to be aggressive.
To be abusive and aggressive. Yeah. Which turned into me growing up afraid of my siblings, and I thirsted for affection from them. It turned into me having the mentality, if I do what they say, they'll like me, they'll let me play with them. I won't have to stand in a corner all day, or I won't have to, stand outside in the heat in like one spot.
If I do something to like please them, then they'll have like a slice of humanity.
Yeah. And then maybe the parents will see it and be like, "Great, yeah, we like her now," which was not the right mentality. We ended up moving churches again. This is our third church because after the oldest daughter left, everyone started asking questions. So we left and we found a new church. And that new church made that family the youth pastors. This is after at the previous church them being the children's pastors, despite everyone seeing what was going on. So I remember sitting in that church at a youth event, and my then dad was talking and, teaching about how you should treat others and all this other stuff. But then whenever he would get home, he would beat me because, "Oh, you looked at a boy. Oh, you sat too close to a boy. Or you looked me in the eye while I was teaching, and I didn't like that." It was very much, "You're beneath me. I'm white, you're black, and you're below dirt," was how it was. And they became youth pastors. I started acting out, rebelling a little bit because I'm like, this isn't right. Like, I had a best friend at that church who was like, "What's going on?" Because I was like sickly thin. I couldn't gain weight. I was just stuck at a certain weight. And, like you gain weight when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
Like, I could never do that. She would come over, they would have like play dates, their own version of play dates, where she would come over on a Sunday after church and then go back with us for Sunday night service. And she would start noticing stuff. She'd be like, "Why is there holes in your door?" Or like if I went over to her house, "Why do you eat so much while you're here?" Because I would have like force and fist because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to eat tonight or the next day or the next. So I would like chow down. And her mom started noticing and asking questions.
And how old were you at those times?
I was about 12 or 13. And then my 14th year, whenever I turned 14, I made a decision to escape, as like my other sisters did it. let me try. I remember creeping out of my window with a couple of bags. I had you remember those alarm clocks that would light up blue if you push the light button?
Right.
I had that as my flashlight.
Life.
I had that as my flashlight. And I remember walking through, we had woods around our house that would lead to the gravel road because we lived out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
I remember walking through there and being so scared of being chased by coyotes.
Right. But it's like
With
coyotes
or death.
Mhm.
I crept out the window and I left and I ended up running away to my best friend's house.
How far away was that?
It was 30 or 40 minutes by car.
Okay.
By car.
Mhm.
And I end up making it to her house. She lets me in. She wakes up her mom. Her mom was like, "What's going on?" Because everyone expected me to finally come out and say it. And I was like, "Oh, nothing. I just need a break." Because something told me, don't say anything. You cannot say anything. And I didn't. She ends up calling the mom. They end up rushing and picking me up and giving me a whole speech about how if I were to run away again, I would die.
They physically, they threatened you with
Yeah.
your life? How did they put it?
So it wasn't more them saying that they were going to do it. It was more of if you run away again, we hope you get and left in a ditch to die. We hope someone picks you up and traffics you. We hope you get beat. We hope, an animal gets you. Anything so you can get out of our air. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the only time that I was threatened. Their oldest daughter, they only have one daughter. I remember one time, it was back remember when Netflix did discs? Yeah, they would do drop-offs. We had a long lane leading to our driveway. It's most country houses in Arkansas do. And I remember the mom sent me and her to go put it back in the mailbox at night. We go to drop it off, and we had a house, and then a little bit further up, we had a pond. The daughter tells me, stand in front of the pond, and I have to do what I'm told.
Right.
Because if I don't, then it's the end of the world for me. She has me stand in front of the pond, facing the pond. She comes up behind me with a pocket knife and puts it up to my throat. And she tells me, nobody would miss you. Nobody would care that you were gone. You're just here for money. So we could literally just hide your body in the pond and still get paid for you. That's how insignificant you are to us. And I remember standing there being like, okay, God, if this is what you have for me, then do it. In that moment, I wanted to die because I was so tired. I was tired of fighting. Every day was a struggle. All forms of abuse all forms of abuse from the siblings. It was mental, physical, sexual, all of it. And I was just like, God, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I can't. So I'm standing there with her, knife to my throat, her behind me, my eyes are closed, and I'm welcoming death. And she pulls away, and God said, not yet. So we walked to the mailbox, because if I go back to the house by myself, oh, you deserted your sister, you're in trouble.
And how was her demeanor after she just...
She just went back to normal.
Okay.
Just back to normal. She was just quiet and just...
Did she seem like she didn't almost know what was happening, or was she...
Oh, no, she knew. I think it was another form of, let's see how far we can push Hannah before we get her to react. Because I learned very early on, don't react. Let what happens, happens,
Right.
and, God's got it. No kid should ever have to grow up like that. Fearing through your life, every day it was abuse from the brothers and the sister, the mom's favorite thing to whip me with outside was a rose bush. And the thorns, the dad, he would only beat me with a belt. He would never touch me inappropriately or anything like that. It was more verbal and physical and mental. It was never sexual. The mom was all forms. I love you, but only if you do this. Don't talk to me, because I don't want you anywhere near me. Serve me as a servant, and I will occasionally show you love.
She's very much teaching you how to love your abuser.
Yeah.
And stick by her. Even though you didn't like her, she would give you a little bit of affection, which kind of signals a kid at the time in their brain to, well, if this is the only way I'm getting affection, then
might as well do it.
I will do it. And you somewhat even acknowledge me.
So after the first time I ran away, I learned not to run away to my best friend's house.
Right.
Because I already knew where that was going to go.
Was your mentality okay, I'm going to do it again?
At first, no. At first I was like, okay, I've learned my lesson. But then there was one night I was laying in my room. There was a light on my wall from the outside. We had a light outside the house. And it was shining on the wall. And I was watching it because I'm just I have nothing else to do. It was pitch black room. I was locked in the room. And I remember a voice telling me, it sounded like myself, but more authoritative. That's how I knew it was God. It was if you stay here, you're going to die. And I started getting flashbacks of my experience with that whole family. And I was like, okay, God. So I packed one bag, didn't even pack a light, and I left.
Just ran for it.
I just left. Like, we had outside dogs that would bark at anything, and they didn't bark. It's like they knew,
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah. God just
you
like
go,
silenced it.
girl. I left and I walked for maybe 3 or 4 hours.
And you didn't know where you were going.
I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I needed to get away. Anything was better than there. When God tells you you're going to die in a situation, you got to listen, you know? So I was just blindly going. And a sheriff's deputy pulls up behind me. I guess someone had called 911 and said, hey, there's like a 13, 14-year-old girl walking down the highway. And he pulls up behind me. He's like, hey, what's going on? You know, you want to talk about it? And I was like, no, I just need to get away. I wanted so badly to tell him what was going on in that home, but something told me, no, it's not your time. I have something else lined up for you. Like, trust me. And I stayed quiet. The sheriff's deputy gets in contact with the parents. I go back to that home. Everything is way worse than it was before I left the second time. They had one of their biological children every night sleeping in my room.
Because now you're on lockdown.
Now I'm on complete lockdown because they're like, we don't know what she's told the sheriff's deputy. Because they kept asking me, what'd you tell him? What'd you tell him? I was honest. I said nothing. And I'm there, complete lockdown. I'm not allowed out of anyone's sight. They tell the church family, you know, oh, she ran away again. We have to give up our position because we just can't handle it. And they go to the pastor and they're like, where can we send her? Mind you, they raised me from a baby. And they said, this is her fault.
Did anybody know you guys were adopted or were you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Everyone knew because it was always the dad's mentality anytime he would introduce us kids was, these are my kids and these are the adopted ones. It was never, these are our kids. Like, we're proud to have them. It was always, this is like a mistake. This was not supposed to happen. She was supposed to die and she didn't. And now we're stuck with it. The mom's mentality was kind of the same too, but you know, like females tend to be a little bit softer in their approach. So people believed her and were like, oh yeah, you must love her. And that narrative lasted until I ran away the second time.
Okay, how old were you this?
I was 14, 2 months away from being 15. So they end up finding a Pentecostal children's home in Tupelo, Mississippi, to send me to. Our pastor is like, this place is great. I vouch for it. You know, well, you guys can send her here. I'll help you guys get the paperwork started, you know, and everything.
Were you happy?
I was so happy. I was worried because, you know, like that's the only family I'd ever known. So I was like, okay, God, like, are you completely terminating this? Because I loved them.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to lose that love whenever you're raised like that. And I remember the night before they drove me to Tupelo, Mississippi, she paraded her adopted kids in front of me. And she said, these are my kids. She said, these are my kids. They're going to give me grandchildren. They are perfect in every way. And you could have had this. You could have had this family. And I'm sitting there. Well, I'm not sitting there. I'm like standing there with tears falling down my face because I'm like, okay, like I get this. This is goodbye for real. Like, you know, like how messed up is it that I still loved them and thought that that was normal and paraded them in front of me like that and had her kids stand there.
And had never said that about you.
No, I was never theirs. I was just a check. And she sends me to bed and I lay in bed bawling my eyes out. But I had to be secretive about it because how they would have me sleep, I always had to sleep on my stomach with my hands behind my back. And if they caught me sleeping any other way, I would get beat as soon as they would see it.
What do you think that reason was for?
Form of control. I don't know what their reasoning was. Like, looking back on it now, I'm like, what did I do to deserve that?
Right. And what logically, just a sick control.
Yeah. Like I remember, like I said, they wouldn't feed me half the time. So we would get like expired bread for our animals. There was a bakery that would give us expired bread and like name brand bread. I remember digging through it in the mornings and finding the least moldy piece and eating it because I'm like, I have to survive somehow. Like I remember eating chicken feed because I'm like, I have to live like somehow. And they caught me on that one because I snuck some bread into my room one time because I was like, I never know what I'm going to eat. And they caught me and I got in trouble. And then their whole story to everyone was, she's a thief. We don't know why she would steal from us. We feed her, we clothe her, we do everything for her. So they sent me away. And I remember them dropping me off And I remember sitting in the intake office. It was a special program at the children's home they had for troubled youth, troubled girls specifically. It was a year-long program. You were only supposed to stay there for a year, and then you could go back home. And I was like, "Oh, Lord Jesus, don't let that year be up soon. Don't let it fly. I want to be able to live life." I remember sitting in that office, tears streaming down my face as they're telling the casework, what is wrong with me? And I'm sitting here and I'm like, God, why me? Like, I've made it this far, and here I am having to listen to lies about myself in front of my pastor. My pastor and his wife were sitting there. The caseworker was there. And then it was me and the parents. And I am bawling my eyes out to the point to where they have to send me out of the room, and the pastor and his wife leave with me. And it's just silence. And I'm still just there crying. And we go to the dorm where I'm going to be staying. And the mom sits on the bed and gives me a hug. And she said, I really wish this would have worked out. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, what? I was afraid I
Your
was going to get
conviction
hit
not
right then
to.
and there. She gives me a hug and she says, I really did love you. And I was just like, in my mind, I was like, God, like, let this be over. She calls the husband into the room and she said, say goodbye to your daughter. And he just looks at me and then walks away. And in that moment, like, I felt such, like, I guess pain almost because of everything I went through. I was like, I'm free. Like, it was all these emotions. Like, I couldn't even be happy because I'm like, I'm supposed to feel sad right now that I'm losing my family. Like, what is wrong with me that I'm not sad?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm crying, but is it like happy or is it like,
Right.
what?
Made to feel guilty.
Yeah. And so we end up like they leave, and then after a while, I'm allowed to write postcards to them. And I remember writing them postcards and being like, I'm good, I'm great, everything's good, because I was expected to write to them despite everything.
Glad that you needed to.
The home, it took me a while to finally share. I think it was after my third postcard that I wrote them that I finally told the counselor, this is what's going on in this home.
Okay.
I didn't go into depth. I would just talk about how I was abused with hangers and stuff like that. So they ended up calling CPS on them. And of course they denied, and CPS did nothing. I didn't know until then exactly how many cases CPS had against that family from the other adopted children. The other adopted children tried to get me taken out of that home on multiple occasions, but something always blocked them. The state never believed the adopted children over the parents. And I guess that family got scared and they're like, we're done. They contacted the children's home and said, we want to terminate our rights.
Right. They don't want any more
They
investigations.
said, we're done. We don't want her. She's lied on us, because I ended up telling the home about all the sexual abuse from the siblings.
Right.
And that was the last straw for the mom and dad.
Because now you're going
after their kids. I'm being truthful. And the home comes to me and they're like, I remember they pulled me into a big conference room. All the workers pulled me into a big conference room. And it was all the workers who understood me and loved me. They sit me down. They pulled me out of school and they sat me down. They're like, hey, your family has decided they don't want you anymore. Like, I'm like, what,
You're like,
15?
oh, no, yeah,
I'm like 15 and I'm like, okay. And I just start crying and they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm officially free.
Yeah, I'm done. I don't have to go back there ever.
Yeah. I already expected it. I already knew that was probably what was going to happen. And God just said,
Today's the day.
Today's the day. You are free. Like, you are good. And I remember them asking, the home asked, they're like, is there anything you want from that family? They're like, this is your one chance. That family had scheduled a visit with me. I hadn't seen them in a year. And then it got canceled because they wanted to terminate. And I remember I told the home, I was like, I want my baby clothes. I want my baby pictures. I want anything that I can give to my kids. Like, I want the good memories of me smiling.
And that's the Holy Spirit putting that in you at that time, because most kids wouldn't think about that. But the Holy Spirit's like, you're going to have children. You're going to share your story with them.
Even though I didn't know how to be a kid or a mother myself at the time. And they had to almost sue that family for that stuff. I remember going to court. I remember standing in front of the judge, and the judge said, is this what you think is in your best interest, to cut ties with this family? Once you cut ties, you cannot go back. You will carry the last name until you're either adopted or married. And they told me that it was going to be close to impossible for me to get adopted again because I was a teenager.
Right.
I was 3 years away from being 18. And I remember standing in front of the judge, and I smiled and I said, this is in my best interest. I want to go through with this termination. And I signed paperwork to have myself terminated from my own family. So they signed everything on their end in Arkansas. I signed everything on my end in Mississippi. So, I'm free now. I am officially, so the home also had a couple other kids who didn't have families. So I am officially an orphan, and it feels wrong that I'm so happy about it.
Yeah.
But I am like,
No more abuse?
no more abuse. I don't have to worry about this. It was sad that I was letting go of extended family, like the mom's stepmom and dad, who I affectionately called Nanny and Pawpaw, because they always looked out for me. Anytime they would watch me, they knew everything that was going on. It was sad to me to be losing that, but it wasn't sad to me to be losing my life. And I'm happy, I'm going to school. They had an on-campus school, so I was going with all the other students. I was having fun. Fast forward to that following Christmas, I get a package with my name on it, and I recognize the name that's on the other end. It's my great aunt from the adopted family. So I tell my caseworker, I'm like, hey, how does she know I'm here? Like, nobody knows. Nobody knew I was there.
Right.
Like, it was kind of like in the middle of the night thing where they took me and I just disappeared. And I was like, this is my aunt. And they're like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. They ended up reaching out to her, and how she had found out about me was at a Pentecostal conference where they were looking for sponsors to sponsor the kids in the home. And my picture came up, and she recognized me.
And she's probably like, what is going on?
Everybody, no one knew where I was at. There's no telling what the family had said.
Right.
And I end up telling the caseworker, I'm like, I want to still have a relationship with her. Can I start writing her? He gets into contact with her because she's my sponsor and she's sending me skirts and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, let me see. And a couple weeks later, he comes and talks to me, and he's like, hey, so they want to set up a visit. Her husband, her, and her daughter, are you okay with that? And I'm like, yes, like this is what I needed. I needed to feel wanted and needed, because I knew these people. I didn't know her daughter.
Right.
But I knew her. And so they come and visit. It's a great visit. Her daughter is like really attentive and is asking me, like, she's asking me questions about what happened, but she knew where to stop just based off of my face. Like, it was a trip full of hugs. They took me out to eat Chinese. At the time, my favorite food was Chinese. They took me shopping. And I remember them leaving and all of us in tears. And I'm giving them hugs. And I'm just like, don't just leave. Like, I want a relationship. And so her daughter gives me her address and is like, here, write me. Like, I'll give it to your caseworker, because everything that we wrote or received had to be read by the caseworker.
Okay.
Just to make sure that there was nothing inappropriate or anything going on. This was the case for all kids. And I remember my first letter to them, I thanked them for their visit. And at the end of the letter, I said, I won't give up on you if you won't give up on me. Something told me to write that, and I sent it. And my caseworker a couple weeks later says, hey, they want to come visit you again. And this time it's only going to be the daughter and her husband, and they want to take you out of state.
Okay.
They want to take you overnight, and I've approved it because you're comfortable with them and I'm comfortable with you going, and I know you're not a flight risk. We go, and I remember driving. They took me to Nashville. They knew several Christian artists like Royal Taylor at the time, and several people, several prophets and everything. And they're like, hey, we're going to go take you to meet Royal Taylor. Like, Torrin's not going to be there, but everyone else is going to be there, and they all want to meet you. And I remember I was sitting in the passenger seat of their car, and I remember the daughter reaches over and grabs my hand, and she's like, we want to talk to you about something. We would like to adopt you. She's like, we want to become your mom and your dad. We understand if you never call us that. She's like, but we love you. We fell in love with you, and we want you to be ours. And you could tell, like, it wasn't from a place of, oh, let's keep all this abuse in the family. Let's keep this quiet. It was more of a, we love you in spite of everything that we heard. We love you, and we want you. We don't believe what these other people have said. We just want you. I said yes. That was the happiest yes of my life.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I have a mom and a dad, and I still couldn't believe it until the court date came. And the night before we had court, they came and picked up my stuff. They lived in Memphis at the time, so it was like an easy drive for them to go back and forth. So they came and grabbed all of my stuff. And I remember sitting in a conference room at the lawyer's office, and the lawyer's like, I'm so happy for you. Like, he handled all the adoptions at that home. And he's like, are you sure this is what you want? And I'm like, yes. So when you're adopted, you have the opportunity to change your name. At the time, my name was Hannah Elizabeth, and I changed it to Hannah Tiffany. I had found out that Tiffany was my biological name.
Wow.
So I changed it to Hannah Tiffany and then my new last name. And my reasoning behind that was so I'd have past, present, and future. So past Tiffany, present Hannah, and then my future as my last name.
Yeah.
And signed it. I was adopted. It was hard for me to allow myself to love and be loved.
Yes. How was that process?
It was difficult, and I think for the most part they understood, but it was hard for them to put themselves in my shoes. You know, I was a teenager, but I wasn't mentally.
Right.
You know, I was never even a kid. Like, I raised myself. I remember bucking up several times to them as parents because I'm like, you guys don't understand. It was like a huge learning curve
Yeah, for
for all
everyone.
of us. Because they're like, she's always been family, but we've never known her. I remember mentioning one time to my dad now, I remember mentioning to him that I loved Reese's. Every day he would come home from work, he would give me a king-size Reese's. And it got to the point to where I had a whole drawer full of Reese's because I got burned out. You know, like they would both take what I loved and blow it up to a magnitude that I was just not really accepting of, but I was just not used to.
Yeah.
I wasn't used to feeling love.
Yeah.
And that's how they chose to love me, was by being like, oh, you love music? Here, let's send you to a week-long college-run music camp in Illinois. Oh, you love singing? Okay, well, this music camp, you get to record. You get to write a song. I ended up writing a song and recording it at that music camp, and it's out there. We get through like the first year and a half, and they're like, hey, we want to move to Kansas. They're like, and you're coming. You have no say. You're coming. You're still underage. We just wanted to let you know this is what's going to happen. And at first I didn't like it. I have a life here, and you just moved me here, and you're expecting me to move again? So I ended up moving to Kansas. I ended up becoming more of the rebellious teenager. I'm still finding myself while finding my child self, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of butting of heads, and I end up leaving. I end up leaving in my car, and I go back to Memphis. And I'm in Memphis, you know, I'm trying to make money. I'm staying with people that they know, so I don't have to pay rent. And I turn to prostitution to end up funding myself because I'm here paying my own bills. Yeah, I'm not having to pay rent, but I'm paying my own food, insurance, phone, and everything. Like, they've never heard this. This is the first time I'm verbally saying this to anyone besides my husband. I turned to prostitution and did that for a while.
How did that come about? Because yes, it's everywhere in a sense,
Mhm.
but if you're not in that world,
I don't know how to describe it. I think I had already thought so lowly of myself. I was like, how much lower can I go?
what can I do for money?
What can I do? Because working retail wasn't doing it. I didn't have a college degree. I didn't have anything.
And at that time, you needed everything to get
Yeah,
a job anywhere.
exactly. You needed something, even to
All the
level up.
documentation.
Yeah, I had nothing. So I ended up turning to that just to pay bills. And this is the first time they're going to hear it. Sorry. I end up turning to that. And then it gets to the point where I'm like, I don't want this anymore. So I end up blindly moving to New Mexico
Okay.
and moving in with someone. And that someone ended up turning into a relationship. And I ended up not wanting to be in that relationship anymore. Met my husband, and then here me and my husband are with 4 children. We ended up dating for 2 months before we found out we were pregnant with our first, and then he was deployed. He was gone for the whole pregnancy, birth, everything. We had to FaceTime for him to see his son. And then he comes home, and here we are with 4 babies.
So let me backtrack a second because I have so
It's
many
a lot.
questions. So at the time you were getting money through prostitution, how long did that last?
It lasted for about a year.
You just going out.
I taught myself how to do it. I taught
Okay.
myself how to meet people
And
and
just be blunt and
yeah, and that's how it was.
God had his hand on
God
you
had it, yes,
because you
for
could have
sure.
died. You
Yes,
could have been
for sure. And
murdered.
this whole time, you know, I'm not talking to my mom and dad, where I'm constantly getting into altercations on the phone with them. And looking back on it now, it's because I hated myself, that I didn't want to feel loved. Because I'm like, I've already sunk to levels that I never thought I would ever do. And
What was your relationship with God like at that time?
I had no relationship with God. I was like, how can God love me when I'm doing this, when I am destroying his temple? Like,
And you grew up
how
in a
can he
very
love me? I
religious
grew up very
setting.
religious and I ended up hating God through all that because I was like, God, you see what I'm going through, but you're not getting me out. But what I didn't realize at the time, I had to make the decision for myself to get out. God wasn't going to do it for me. I had to do it for myself, you know?
It's like
And
everything is lined up and the
mhm,
door is open. His hand is there. You
mhm.
just have to grab it.
Yep, and just accept it. And yeah, I'm very lucky to be alive. I went through several different relationships through that were abusive. Ended up moving to New Mexico. That didn't work out. How me and my husband met was my then boyfriend was doing Uber at the time, and my now husband's best friend was passenger. And my ex ended up sharing some of my story with her because she had an abusive background too. And she's like, "Oh, I want to meet her. I think I could be a good example to her." I end up going over to her house and we began talking about relationships and stuff. And I began to realize that there was stuff in my relationship that wasn't healthy. And I'm like talking about it. And my husband is like staring at me and he's like, if you ever need a place to stay, I have an extra room. You'll be good. You'll be fine. I end up calling him the very next morning. And I'm like, hey, did you mean it? Like, I need to get out. And he's like, yeah, cool. I thought I had a little bit more time, but yeah. And he
Yeah.
comes and gets me. And the rest is history. Like we were in that awkward, like he would come home from work and he'd be like, did you eat? Like literally as flat as could be, military, he'd be like, did you eat? And I'd be like, no. And he'd be like, you want to go get some barbacoa tacos? And we would eat them in the car, and he ended up taking me to his family's Thanksgiving. And, like we ended up falling in love. We had like a miniature breakup, but we ended up getting back together the same day, basically, or the next day. And then we find out we're pregnant with our firstborn. And I remember being so scared, but yet so giddy because everything I went through, I was like, how am I going to be a mom? And then my husband was like, well, I'm being deployed in like 2 weeks. He's like, it's a year-long deployment. I'm not going to be here for any of this. And he's scared to tell his family because we'd been dating for only about 2 months. We broke up, got back together, and it was just a whole thing. And he ends up telling them, and they're shocked, but they tell him, we'll take care of her while you're gone. Okay. We got her. He ends up leaving me the car, the house, everything. I ended up painting his whole house while he was gone. It was like a total bachelor. He ends up leaving me his dog, which was his most prized possession. He left me his cards, left me everything, said, if you want to work, work. If you want to do anything, you don't want to do anything, cool. Like, great. Yeah. I'll be back in next January.
And this is a whole different found freedom.
Yeah. I'm like, what? Like, I have a house now? I have a vehicle that I don't have to pay for? Like, what? I was in shock. I ended up doing like DoorDash.
Right.
So I could feel like I was doing something and contributing because I was like, I'm not going to have him pay for all the baby stuff. Like, we've only been dating 2 months. I need to be able to say that I bought this. That way, if it doesn't work out, I can take it with me. I had my son. He ended up being born with a heart condition. He had to stay in NICU for about a week until we figured out his medicine. He's good now. And then my husband got home from deployment. And then we shortly, within like less than a month, we got pregnant with our second born. And I had them a year and 2 days apart. And then I said, you know what? I think I'm going to try for a girl. We ended up having a girl. And then we just had our fourth baby 7 months ago. So I have a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 7-month-old.
Beautiful.
And I'm learning how to be a mom, but I'm also learning how to be a kid in their eyes, through their eyes. Like I'm learning, okay, kids do this. Okay. Like it's okay. They don't need to be disciplined for this. It's a kid. I'm learning patience. I'm learning how to love and how to be loved. And last November, the first adopted mom comes up as a friend suggestion on Facebook. And it's like a slap in the face because I'm like, I never thought I would ever see that voice again. I check out her profile and here comes that voice again. You need to reach out. And I'm like, God, I really don't want to. And God's like, you need to reach out and you need to forgive her. I messaged her. She never looked at it. I messaged her pictures of my babies. And I just told her, I said, thank you. Thank you for instilling in me a love of God. Thank you for bringing me up in church. And I forgive you. And I sent it and I screenshotted it and sent it to my mom. And my mom was like, whoa. Like, how can you do that? And what I always say about how I was raised and how I was brought up and all the abuse and everything that I endured was I don't see it as, now looking back on it, I see it as a blessing and I see it as a lesson from God of how not to be a mom or a friend or someone that someone sees on the street. Like I know how to be a Christian, an authentic Christian, not just, okay, the outside looks perfect, but I'm awful on the inside. Like God said, yeah, you may have all this, but Hannah, you're not right. So it came, like, the forgiveness that I feel can only be described as God. Like if I were to see them again, I would probably just give them a hug and just be like, it's okay. Like, it's fine. Would I ever like want to have a relationship with them? Probably not. But just being like, I'm fine. Like, we're cool. I forgive you. It's like,
Yeah.
you know.
I have two things for
Mhm.
you. The whole time you're talking, I see a pattern in your story that God keeps replenishing and giving you more, double,
Mhm.
triple, quadruple of everything.
Yes.
And so the scripture that just keeps being blasted in my mind is Christ came to give life and life more abundantly. Literally, you're being rained with abundance
Yes.
from a mom who loves you and a dad who loves you and a husband and friends and then so many children and
Mhm.
blessing on blessing on blessing. And so where did your breakthrough with Jesus, what did that look like and how did that come about?
My breakthrough with Jesus was it was shortly after I gave birth to my third baby. She was born at 34 weeks and 4 days, very preemie. I had severe postpartum depression after having her because I'm like, God, how do I do this? How do I connect with my baby? And God was just like, how can you connect with your kids when you haven't even connected with yourself? And I started bawling and I started getting flashbacks over my life. And God was just like, I washed Judas's feet. And that's something that kept coming to mind. Like he knew everything that Judas was going to do, but he still washed his feet and still showed him love. I had tears streaming down my face. It was not pretty. I sunk so low, not physically low, like spiritually low. I became a child to God and I just said, God, take it. I'm tired. I don't need this anymore. I don't want it anymore. And I just need you to take it. And God said, that's what I've been waiting for. I've been giving you all, like you said, He gave me so much. I've been giving you all of this in hopes that you will understand. I'm here and I've never left you. However many times you shook your fist at me and cursed me and all this other stuff, I've been here. I watched you sink to your lowest. I held you. Like you may have never been a kid to anyone, but you were a child to me and you are still my child. And I am working everything for your good. And from that moment on, like life became brighter. My postpartum depression disappeared. I began healing myself, connecting more with my children and my husband because it was still hard for me to love. And I began fully, wholeheartedly loving. And then I told my husband, let's get into church because we didn't really go to church. Like we attended another Pentecostal church for a while, but it was just more so we could say we went to church.
Okay, like a Sunday.
Yeah, just like, okay, let's get dressed up and go. Let's just treat it like a date
Were
and just go.
you at any point a little worried about stepping back into a Pentecostal or stepping back into church period?
The Pentecostal part, yes, but church, not really. Because I, had that conversation with God. The Pentecostal, my fear about stepping back into a Pentecostal church is that there is so much emphasis on the outside holiness that there is little to no inside holiness, where the images of Christ, but we all have our little secrets.
Right.
That's how I was brought up. So that's what I thought it was going to be. We have since left that church just due to differing opinions and views. And we found a church here in town that is great with our kids. We have a son, our second son has autism, and nobody really understands him except for, me and my husband. And the Sunday school director there was like, I'm going to have you talk to the Sunday school teachers and you tell them what all he needs so we can better support you and your family. And I almost started crying because no church had ever done that. He was always too loud or he doesn't listen or why isn't he potty trained yet? Why is he like this? And nobody took the time to understand him. They knew he was autistic, but that's the only way they defined him. And ever since we started going there, our marriage is better. Our kids are closer than ever. Looking back on it now, if I had a message for the first adopted family, I'm going to face the camera now. I would say last night I was praying on doing this podcast, and one phrase came to mind. And it is, even though you have hurt me, I would still wash your feet. I forgive you. I love you. And I pray that you learn to forgive yourself and love yourself. And I pray that you ask for forgiveness from God. That's all I want to say to them, because I know they're probably going to see this.
Yeah, 100%. I do.
100%.
I pray that the Holy Spirit brings this to them, and whatever there is going on in their life,
Mm.
they are brought to the feet of Jesus, because Satan is trying to get as much as he can while he still can.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, every knee will bow, every tongue will confess,
Yes.
and we all have to account for what we have done. And there's still time, there's
Mm-hmm.
still hope. God's grace is upon us at this very moment, and he's still giving out grace upon grace until he doesn't anymore. And so I always tell people, you're never too far.
Mm-hmm.
Your sins, what you have done, you think you've gone too far. I can't. I've done this, I've done that. And you start racking up your things, and God doesn't see them as that when you give them to Jesus. It's not a list of what you've done, it's a receipt of what Jesus has already
Yes.
paid. And so I just pray that it does come into their path,
Mm-hmm.
and they see this and they can see, wow, there is still hope. We
Mm-hmm.
are still children of God.
Yeah.
And so come, run,
Mm-hmm.
sprint back to his feet, because grace is running out.
If God can take a baby who is not supposed to live,
Mm-hmm.
and she goes through 14 years of heavy abuse, finds a loving family, goes into prostitution, gets out of prostitution, and still finds her way back to a loving God who gives her the desires of her heart. It's my husband, everything that I have. You are never too far from the love of Christ to make it back. And if you don't have a relationship with Christ, then look into it. Find a church, find a mentor, find someone to talk to. And the other thing too is, you may be here and you may be listening or watching, and you may have gone through the same type of stuff that I went through, or you are going through the same stuff that I went through. I just want to let you know there is hope. There is always hope. And if you don't have hope, it literally just takes a simple prayer. You just have to reach out to God, pray. And what I've learned is to never ask God for something. I always thanked God for a loving family. I always thank God for my future children. And I always thanked God for a good life in the future. And here I am. I am 27 years old, and I have everything that I ever thanked God for. It's never too late. And He is there watching you, and He is just waiting on you to make the first step, because you have to have a willing spirit and a willing attitude. Because if you don't have that, He can't help you. That's what I want to say.
I just feel like the Holy Spirit's going to lead this to a 13, 14-year-old girl, boy, who's somehow came across this and not known. Maybe they can't change their circumstances because of legalities, but Christ is way bigger. Our God is way bigger than anything they are facing. Would you be able to pray us out?
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful time that we have had in reflection and in testimony sharing. Lord, I pray that every heart that is under my voice, every ear that is listening, I pray that you will surround them with an overwhelming sense of peace. God, I pray that whoever is listening to this, who is battling an abusive situation, or a person who is the abuser in the situation, I pray that you will lead them to you. I pray that you will bring someone into their life to be a light, and I pray that you will show them unconditional love. And I pray and I thank you for allowing them to forgive themselves and for allowing them to be loved and feel loved. And I thank you for bringing them closer to you. It's in your holy name I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for
And thank you for having me.